into the section where we're talking about engaging in democracy, that we consider these elements and these tools as to really uncover, what story are we telling, whose story are we telling when we are looking at voting rights. And so another one that kind of plays in that you'll see is an activity called Who Lives Here. This is where you're walking around and kind of doing a visual audit of your school and who's represented in the school. And I can see transitioning this concept into maybe something that's related that revolves around voting. So maybe you are even looking at a voter registration place of voter registration drive. If you are maybe attending a candidate forum, that you're using this concept of who lives here to figure out who is being represented and who isn't being represented, so that you're really considering with students, who's in the room for this. So I just wanted to offer that up as an extension related to our work today around voting.
I also wanted to say that the only reason why my workshop wasn't not in the packet was because I didn't want it to be revealed until you did it. But I'm going to send all of the documents so that it can go in a follow-up email, so you can have the documents that we use. Yeah.
Right. So after we kind of went through the investigation stage of exploring, we're now going to move into a section where we kind of get ourselves a bit more knowledgeable around uncovering the voices that are not heard and the votes that are not cast to create a foundation for change with our students. In our fall workshop, we also focused on voting, but we just talked mostly about how do we engage youth in democracy. Because in the 2010 census, there was 24% of people were 18 or younger, which is like 74 million people or something along those lines. So we know we need to get youth engaged, whether they're 18 or not. And now we're looking at a little bit deeper. How do we help youth engage with all of the voices that may or may not be heard, who is marginalized in the democratic process? And so now we can talk about how we're going to investigate that. And we're going to look at what the democratic process is and what the democratic process isn't. So we're going to do that by first considering, when we go back to the panel, the timeline panel, we've kind of looked at the lens of diversity and thinking about diversity and who's being heard and not heard. But now we also need to talk about the rights. What are the things that are given to us through the democratic process, and then take it further, and what is not being given to us in the democratic process. And so to start with rights, I think that's an accessible point for kids of all ages, and we have a tool to help you do that. We're going to invite some people to come up and help us read out loud that story, so we can use it as an experience, and that you can take this tool and build off of it into kind of more complex lessons in your classroom around the democratic process. So, if I could have some volunteers come up. The president of the jungle.
We're teachers.
Lion wanted a swimming pool, so because he was king of the jungle, he rerouted the river to flow into his front yard. Now he has his pool. Monkey.
It's ridiculous.
Armadillo.
Lion thinks only of himself.
We have no water. My children are thirsty.
Let's protest. What if we had a new leader?
The other animals were not happy. They missed the river. Lion had gone too far. Maybe he should not be king of the jungle. The animals decided to have a demonstration. They marched to Lion's swimming pool to protest.
Water is for everyone.
Give back our river!
Hashtag occupy the jungle.
Who's the crocodile?
And who's the
The
alligator?
alligator.
Yep.
This key needs to go.
But Lion couldn't care less what they thought. So the animals decided it was time for a new leader.
No more kings.
Let's be a democracy. Let's hold an election.
What's an election?
Actually, Owl, you can say these parts.
Okay. In an election, anyone who wants to be the leader can become a candidate and put together a campaign. Each animal gets to vote for the leader. The candidate who gets the most votes becomes president.
Everyone liked the idea, so they drew up the rules for the election. Rules for the election. 1, we will hold an election every spring. 2, any animal can be a candidate. 3, each animal gets 1 vote. 4, votes are secret. 5. The candidate with the most votes wins. 6. Candidates cannot trade gifts for votes. 7. Candidates cannot eat their opponents.
Thank goodness.
Monkey, Sloth, and Snake were excited to become candidates. Lion didn't want to be left out, so he became a candidate too. Then the campaigns began. That's Bear.
Oh, being fair.
That lion has some nerve.
And then the campaigns began, so now is the Lion. So Lion, you can read out. your
King of the jungle, vote for Lion. VP, Lioness. My beloved subjects, I descend from a long line of kings. It was my cherished great-great-grandfather who expelled the smelly possums so the rest of us could live in peace. I provided jobs to the animals who diverted the water from the river to build my swimming pool. If something is not broken, do not fix it. For tradition, vote for Lion.
Monkey.
It's time for change. Monkey for president. VP, Toucan. It's time for Lion to go. The king is sneaky and is as slippery as a rotten banana peel. He said we could all swim in his pool, and now we can't. Under my leadership, everything will be different, and we will build burrows and homes for everyone. No more lies. Monkey for president.
Snake.
She doesn't just promise, she delivers. Snake for president. Vice President Mouse. Seems like a bad idea. I am a popular snake. I grew up in the jungle with all of you. I've crawled through burrows and nests, getting to know you. We have faced the great drought together, and we have survived fires and hunters. You know I will be there for you. Vote for Snake.
Sloth.
Make your vote count. Choose me, Sloth, for president, Vice President Ladybug. My fellow animals, it is time to plan our future together. I want to hear from all of you, and please don't judge me by my name. I am not lazy. I don't rush because good government does not happen overnight. With patience, we will make the jungle better for everyone. Vote Sloth.
Each candidate got busy trying to convince the voters why they would be the best leader. They went on TV, they took selfies with voters, handed out pamphlets, discussed the issues. They held rallies. Some said wild things about the other candidates. They put up posters and discussed more issues. They had debates to talk about their ideas, starting with Monkey. This one was a little bit hard to see. So
Okay.
That's Monkey.
Snake, how would you solve the bird traffic jams?
Next is Snake.
Easy. Every bird will be assigned a time to fly.
Sloth.
Why don't we ask the birds what they think?
Lion.
Who cares? Just tell those high flyers what to do.
And sometimes they just argued. Monkey.
Snake is venomous.
Well, nobody is better than me.
Lion is selfish.
Hey, I didn't finish what I was saying.
Finally, election day arrived. The animals lined up to cast their secret votes in the ballot box. Owl was in charge of counting the votes. Unfortunately, Lion got disqualified for violating rule number 6. He had been giving voters peanuts so they'd choose him. When the votes were added up, the new president was announced. It was Sloth! Sorry, new book, very sticky. The animals all gathered to hear Sloth's victory speech.
I was not prepared for a victory. In this election, I learned so much from everybody. We each have something to say, and we all should listen. Lion wants to be recognized for all his work. Monkey wants us to have food and shelter. Snake and I agree we are stronger when we work together. The first thing I will do as president is create a team to help us make the jungle a great place for every animal.
And that's the story of how Sloth became the jungle's first president. Of course, not everyone was happy with the election results. So it's a good thing that there would be another election next year. The end. Thank you to our performers.
There's a cool glossary there.
There is a great glossary of terms in the back, which are all bold throughout the book. And we're going to be giving away one of these to each school.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's not one to, yeah, one to each school, so if there's two of you in the same school.
And we'll have some more of these on the table because now we want to process this. This is a great entry point for kids of any age. I piloted it with my own first grader at home. And here was her comment when I asked her, I said, well, what does that mean? Why would you want to tell someone to vote? Why would you want to engage with someone to vote with this book? And she said, well, it's important to vote because some presidents might want to still be president, but some others might not want that. So then they vote so they can work it out easily, so it can be fair. And so that was her reflection on it, and I think that's appropriate for a first grader when they're thinking a lot about fairness. But then how do we help move them past that point? Because this book really represents what our democracy is in its ideal state. And now we have the opportunity to take this and dissect this with our students and figure out where can we go with this to figure out what is now real about what's going on in our election process. So that's the way that we're going to reflect on it today. And so we are going to have you kind of process that now that we've read the story together. And so we're going to have you create a T-chart that's on the paper here on your desk. And together as a team, we would like you to, sorry, my battery fell out. On your T-chart on the left, you'll say, pull it up so we can do it. Go this way. Our democracy, what it is and what it isn't. On one side, the left side, you'll write ideal. What was the version of the ideal democracy within the story? On the left side, you'll write what is truly real that we know about our democratic process, some critical analysis, compared to what the ideal situation was inside the story. If you're looking for a good starting point, the rules for the election is an excellent place to start. There were a lot of murmurs going on when I read this out loud because we know that this is ideally what it would look like, but not really what it looks like. So just a quick 5 or 7 minutes for you to work out some of these ideas about what is ideal in the book versus what is real in our system.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm just saying, like, it doesn't have to be book, like utopia, dystopia.
Wow.
What really inspired me about this book in particular, Kathy, I'm glad that you found this, because what inspired me about this is that it makes it accessible. A lot of times when you're in the museum space and you're debriefing, the feeling of overwhelm is something that comes up a lot for people. And so, within this space of the democratic process, I felt like this was just an easy access point. And that then there was a lot of different variations of where you could take it. I could see, just even for younger students, just understanding the voting process, but then later on adding the layers first developmentally about, okay, now let's break it down and see, what is the system ideally, and then where are we really with the process and with the system. So this is a way to break that down. Does anybody want to share somewhere where they might go with this, or a connection to what they're doing already where this might fit in, or an extension? I'd love to hear what it might turn into.
I teach drama, so I don't do a lot of this stuff in my classroom, but my buddy that teaches 7th grade humanities at our school did a huge unit earlier in the year. I think the computer segment would be a brain pop, but I'm not positive about that, but it allowed each student to create a candidate campaign across the country, and then that was sort of the virtual thing, they took it out of that and made up their own parties. Every student in his class had to write a campaign speech about actual issues. Then the students voted, and then the winners presented to the whole middle school, and the teachers voted. And it was, there's no power attached to it or anything, but it was really interesting to see what students, especially the ones that made it to the final round, picked up on as the important parts of messaging in the same way that the animals did. But like, you know, it was really gratifying to hear how, for me, progressive and liberal most of my students are talking, you know, it's all gun control and climate change and ending child separation and all sorts of, but even more than that, you know, the best part was that they made up these biographies and they'd be like, hi, I'm Tina from Iowa, and I ran for Iowa City Council, and then I went and got a perfect, you know what I mean? And like, hearing the students imitate what is so common for us who pay attention to that stuff really drives home, I think, some of these, and even some of the disparities. Like, knowing it's fake, I don't care what fake biography you made up on. That should focus on the platform. But it really became apparent that like part of the assignment was to emulate a campaign speech. And the cliches and the tropes that come out of that, I thought, is really useful for them to start to put that stuff into play.
And this is kind of a similar mock experience.
Right.
I can see being a second grade teacher at that school and saying, well, we know we're going to be experiencing this, we're going to be watching the seventh graders do this, let's read this book so we can understand what that, a little bit more about what that looks like, or even the seventh grade teacher starting with this book and saying, this is basically what we're going to do. Other ideas, thoughts, connections?
Like, I was kind of thinking like a community read would be interesting if you did it like now or in the fall if it was really on kids' minds. So you could kind of have the book accessible for probably K through 6. You're kind of your first grader, and the insight she was able to garner from it, and then kind of having kids go in different directions based off of what, you know, their analysis would be. And in older grades, like for us, we might really look into some of the more historical pieces of restrictions and talking about today in Supreme Court cases. And you could do other kind of conversations about some of these things as well. Is it real? Could you see problems with it? Even just talking about like a set schedule, like can everyone easily get to vote on a Tuesday in November if you work? Like you could really take in different levels with different grades.
Yeah, like a one book, one school idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I like that, you know, you could just, again, take one concept, one real inaccuracy compared to what is presented here and just build off of that. So I like that as an entry point too. So what we want to do now is we've kind of looked, when you think about the timeline downstairs, and we were talking about how we're going to look through diversity, we're going to look through rights, and this was kind of how we were looking through what our rights are within a democratic system. But now we need to turn to the intolerance and the injustices. And so that's what kind of this real versus ideal was meant to begin the conversation around, but we're still within that education phase, the investigation phase, where we can start to look at a little more deeply about what some of the injustices are within the democratic system and how you would be able to then be a little more educated to take that knowledge back to your